that's me. I threw a couple of pretty flowers in there, so it wouldn't be too bad. My name is Phil Pannell. I'm the land manager at the National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But all of the work that I'm going to be discussing was performed when I was with the Maryland Forest Service in western Maryland. The folks who worked with me primarily on this grant-funded project were Aaron Cook, who at that time was with the Western Maryland RC&D Council, and Ann Harston Strang, who was also with the Maryland Forest Service. You see the title there is Controlling Japanese Hop or Hops. You'll probably hear me say it both ways. I got so used to calling it Japanese hops, but the correct name is hop. But you never see just one, so hops is okay too. This plant first came to our attention on tree planting sites around 2002. We have a lot of riparian forest buffer planting going on about that time, particularly in connection with a program called the CREP, the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, which was focused on the riparian forest buffer planting for the Chesapeake Bay program. And in 2003, after Hurricane Isabel caused a lot of flooding, we really saw a big boom in hop populations. And there was a lot of effort made to try to control it, and sometimes it seemed to work, and other times it seemed to have no effect at all, or made it worse, and people really were becoming quite frustrated, and a lot of time and money was being spent, and these buffers that a lot of money and commitment had been put into were in danger. So you can see the plants there in a typical riparian buffer planting situation, just getting started. This is what they can look like by mid to late summer. Another shot of riparian forest buffer planting. We often use the tree shelters in these plantings primarily for deer, but they serve other purposes such as keeping track of where the trees are. As you can imagine, a little tree seedling would get lost in there. So the Maryland DNR Forest Service applied for a NIF-WIF Pulling Together Initiative grant, and we formed the Monocacy Watershed Japanese Hops Cooperative Weed Management Area Committee in 2006. And you all are familiar with those acronyms there, I hope. NIF-WIF, PTI, and CWMA. And it was eventually accepted, and some of the reasons why I think that it was accepted were that it was watershed-based, it was within the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which was kind of important, particularly at that time, and it was multi-state. Both Maryland and Pennsylvania were included in that watershed, and multi-county. 3 different counties were involved. It was something that was threatening riparian forest buffer planting, which was very important. And we didn't have any other CWMAs around here at that time, so it was sort of a pilot project, so to speak. And at least for us, it was a new exotic species. While there certainly has been Japanese hops in the United States, and it's been problems here and there, it's kind of new for us as being a problem, and we were able to pull together some good partners to bring along with us in this grant and in this project. The initial partners you can see here are some of the ones that you might expect: state, multi-state, multi-agencies. Park Service was very much involved. Western Maryland RC&D Council, Resource Conservation and Development Council, which represents several different government and related agencies, and the Potomac Watershed Partnership, which is something that's fairly unique, brings several different government and NGO orgs together strictly for this, basically the upper Potomac watershed area for particular projects, and this kind of fit it right in with what they were working on. Some other agencies and organizations that kind of merged in with us and supported us. You can see there both community action type groups, local groups, landowners, and local weed control programs. We have a very active state weed control program, and individual counties fall under that, and that's a very important part of making this whole thing work, because those guys are out there spraying, and they know the plants, and they know the people involved, and they have the expertise to make that all work. So in filling out the application, some of the things that we put in there that you all might kind of glean some info from. Now, this particular CWMA might not be similar to what you all have put together or what you're contemplating put together, but we can certainly learn from each other's attempts to develop and organize an approach to invasive plant problems that we face. So if you're putting together an application for an IFWIF grant, you might want to just kind of pay attention to what we did and see if you are doing something similar, or hopefully you can do it better. So these are the summary. This is the project site description: multi-state, public-private, monocacy battlefield. So we've got national land, state land, listing the zip codes, how many sites we're going to do, which district it's in, the time period for this grant. There's just a picture of the hops plant, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So, what are our objectives? And of course you're limited in what you can put in here. So our objectives, this is just the first one: coordinate a weed management area, and what we're going to do, coordinate hops control. So we're actually going to do control. How many acres? One site with community volunteers. We're going to determine effective control measures and time. We're going to monitor the results of this control and measure what's going on. We're going to increase awareness among landowners, managers, fact sheet workshop. So we're not just say we're going to do good things, it's got to be specific. Another view of Japanese hop. along Antietam Creek. Many of you are familiar, or at least have heard of the Civil War Battle of Antietam, where if you're on the rebel side or the Confederate side, sometimes called the Battle of Sharpsburg. If you've heard of the Burnside Bridge, part of the battle, this looks just like Burnside Bridge over Antietam Creek, but this is actually further upstream. Same type of bridge, same contractor built it, and that is our nemesis right there. So the grant paid for salary for a contractual employee, vehicle, materials. Didn't need very much in materials. Actually, some of the stuff was donated or we already had. Paid for contractual spraying of the hops sites that were identified in this process that we're going to talk about. And to get people to come out to a workshop, we've got to have it at a nice place, put on the dog, get people refreshed, and give them a donut or something, to publish a fact sheet with the information that you've put together after you learn what we find out, and we match that with the salaries of our regular government employees who are part of the project. So what did we do? We studied the life cycle and seasonality of the plant. Of course, some of that is known, but we've got to kind of pin it down to the locality there and make sure that everybody understands when you can do what. Survey the hops locations. Where is it growing? What kind of areas is it growing? Evaluation of the previous control efforts. What's already been done and what worked and what didn't work. Test control methods for effectiveness. Tried both pre-emergent and post-emergent herbicide applications with various things, various timing, manual, mechanical, and cultural controls, and then control hops on the infested sites, including the use of volunteers for, in this case, manual control. So real quick, what is Japanese hop? Invasive exotic plant, imported intentionally, can mostly be found along waterways, roadsides, fence rows. Looks somewhat similar to marijuana. It's in the same family, climbing or trailing the vine, but it doesn't have tendrils. It's covered with what's called spinulose hairs. It's very irritating and can cause skin dermatitis, not quite like poison ivy, but very irritating nonetheless, more like the plant that grows along stream banks there. Very lush and green, highly invasive, dies at the first frost. Cones, very similar to the hop plant that we derive the flavoring for beer, but it does not have the same lupulin chemical that is essential for use in beer. So no good for that. And you can't smoke it and get high, even though it's in the same family as cannabis. And we tested and found out a bunch of things about how long the seeds float and get carried on floodwaters. The vines can get to 30 feet long and can climb. There's the seeds. I'm going through some of this stuff pretty quick because really you're talking about the CWMA part of it, but we did determine things about when it germinates, what periods it's actively growing, when it flowers, when the seed develops in our locality. All important for every aspect of control. When does the seed germinate? Each year we tested that in the field. 2008. How many days does it take for the seed to germinate? Gathered information about how to identify it photographically so we could show people in pictures and slides how to differentiate it from other similar looking plants, so people who are not natural resources professionals can tell cinquefoil or burr cucumber from Japanese hop. That's a test plot. Typical riparian forest buffer planting. Tree's going to have a hard time. One of the first things we did was after PR, sending out a survey to landowners and natural resources professionals and ag folks to try to find where the plants were. 40 surveys came back, 270 acres were mapped, mostly on riparian areas. And that also helped us find where we could do the testing and later control work. We did public information on where it is, what it is. We did articles in the newspaper, announcements on the radio, word of mouth from all the folks who were participating in our meetings and committee. So we mapped where it was found. You can see the Mason-Dixon line is that horizontal line about 2/3 of the way up. Did not find any in the Monocacy watershed in Pennsylvania. Only found it in Maryland, and those red dots are where it was found along the tributaries or the main stem of the Monocacy River. It's also found along the Potomac River. We examined sites for evidence of biological control agents. Did not find anything that was very promising. Considered potential measures for cultural control, manual control. We actually did some manual control tests, and we also, in using volunteers for manual control, in talking to them and looking at the sites before, during, and after what they were doing, got some valuable insights into what and where that might be useful. This is a volunteer group from Friends of Waterford Park. Typical volunteers from that particular community association, older folks. They're actually working on English ivy right there, but they were also later that spring and summer pulling Japanese hop. That's what it looks like in the root system. Investigated mechanical control and how practical that was. Did testing of pre-emergent controls. I'm just skipping through this quickly just so you can get an idea of some of the things that we did. There was one of our test plots with post-emergent control using glyphosate. Aaron Cook was my co-author in putting all this together. We evaluated not only the effectiveness but the cost effectiveness of the various materials that we used. Evaluated over the whole period of the growing season and determined how effective they were in preventing seed set. We also tested pre-emergent herbicides that were put on prior, or hopefully prior to the seeds germinating in the spring. This is one plot taking you through March through July. May, June, and July. We tried a number of different pre-emergent herbicides. You can see the hop seeds there on the bare dirt. And that's actually March 12th, and one day later, March 13th, it germinated. What a difference a day makes. Measuring the soil temperature on the day that it germinated. Different evaluation of the products over the course of the growing season and how well they were effective over the course of the growing season. We also tested the pre-emergent herbicides in a more controlled situation in pots. Similar products over the course of the growing season. And of course that actually worked much better than field conditions. So armed with that better information, we worked with our weed control folks and with the landowners who were working on trying to maintain these sites, and on 7 riparian forest buffer planting sites that were infested with Japanese hop using post-emergent herbicide applications. We carried out control measures that were mostly pretty successful, and control was carried out on 2 community parks, also in riparian areas, using volunteers, and they were also mostly successful. There was some regrowth issues at the end of the growing season, but certainly a whole lot better than if it hadn't been done. And landowners who were trying to manage these riparian buffer plantings under the CREP program had a lot better information available to them on how to deal with Japanese hop using any of the methods that we had tested and evaluated. In addition to just gathering that information, we did publication of it and presentation at some professional conferences. So, hey, we had a two-year NIFWIF PTI grant, and in that 2 years, actually we had to extend it a little bit. Are we done? Well, we met the deliverables of the grant. We found out where much of the plant's growing and where it's likely to be found in the future. We controlled a whole bunch of it. Certainly didn't get to all the places or get all of it in the places where it was, but the places that we picked out were places where it would make a difference in controlling it. We know a whole lot more about it than we did before. We know more about what works and what doesn't work in controlling it. So at least people aren't wasting their time trying to do things that we know doesn't work. We shared that information with a lot of the resource people, the county agents and the county weed control people and the local foresters and folks like that who are out working with these folks and advising them on what to do. So we made a lot of the landowners and the environmentally involved citizens and some of the general public aware of the issue, and that there's things that can be done about it. And we made that information on Japanese hops and how to better control it available to anyone who seeks it out. And the members of that CWMA continue to share that information, you know, what works, you know, what doesn't work. Somebody wants info on this, that, or the other thing, and on other weeds as well, and help folks who ask advice. So the CWMA is done? Is done, really. There's more to know, certainly a lot more to do, and lots of people who could and should be involved. But unless someone wants to take up the banner of fighting the plague of Japanese hops, we're going to declare victory and call it quits, which is actually what we did several years ago. No one felt a pressing need to continue the CWMA for purposes of Japanese hops or for any other weed issue. We already have a very strong noxious weed law in Maryland that deals with thistles and Johnson grass, and to a more limited extent multiflora rose. And those folks are hard pressed to deal with that, and they actually do try to enforce it, unlike some other areas. So no more Japanese hop monocacy watershed CWMA. For those who are interested in the information, sort of a real short version of info on the plant and how to control it and so forth, there is information on the internet. There's a very good source, and probably many of you are already familiar with it, the National Park Service Plant Conservation Alliance website page for the Alien Plant Working Group, Weeds Gone Wild. They have so many different names stepped down in this process, but they have a whole series of fact sheets on different plants. And if you click on the section on vines, you can find the one on Japanese hop, and that is the website. And that'll actually be up here for another couple of minutes while I entertain any questions. Steve?
Okay, thanks, Phil. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to type them into the chat box there. There's enough people on that I'm going to leave the mute on the microphones. There just would be way too much noise distraction. And if you want to think about any questions, Phil, are you going to hang on, or are you going to pop off now?
I'm going to stay through the next speaker.
Okay, so if you have any questions for Phil that you want to address, maybe you can think about them, type them in, and after the next speaker, well, maybe we can address those questions as well. But since it's 11:30, 12:30, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with getting Kathy on. Okay. Thanks, Phil. That was a good presentation. So, Kathy, I'm going to switch the presenter over to you and let you take the computer.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to pull up my first slide. And here we go.
Okay, you're good to go.
Okay. So I just want to say good afternoon to everyone, and Just wanted to say good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for staying around to listen to my talk. My name is Kathy McLinn, and I received my master's from the Duke University School of the Environment, now Nicholas School of the Environment. I have a PhD from the State University of New York at Stony Brook's Department of Ecology and Evolution, and my dissertation focused on the effects of purple loosestrife and common reed on native plants, small mammals, and birds in freshwater tidal wetlands of the Hudson River. I've worked as the volunteer coordinator for the Hudson River Submerged Aquatic Vegetation Project. I was program manager for the Significant Coastal Fish and Wildlife Habitat Program for the New York Department of State, and since August 2010, I've been the coordinator of the Northeast Illinois Invasive Plant Partnership. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about how we came about and what has happened since our inception. So our organization took about 7 years to actually come to fruition. So in 2003, some local partners received some funds to start the New Invaders Watch program, which is our regional early detection program. And they also established a small cooperative weed management area in Lake and McHenry counties to take care of leafy spurge. 5 years later, Chicago Wilderness's Natural Resource Management team expressed an interest in possibly setting up a CWMA in the Chicago area. And Midwest Invasive Plant Network offered one of its CWMA workshops so that more than 55 organizations and agencies could learn about what would be involved in setting up a CWMA and what that might look like in the Chicago area. In 2008-2009, they established an ad hoc committee, which actually became most of our original steering committee, and they developed a structure for what a CWMA would look like, as well as creating a long-term work plan for the first decade. In 2010, Chicago Wilderness and this ad hoc committee had submitted an application for GLRI funds, and they did receive money from the Forest Service, and they then hired me, and I started in August. The area we cover is in 18 counties of Northeast Illinois. We are one of 2 official CWMAs in the entire state, the other being River to River CWMA. We also work with the Southeast Wisconsin's Invasive Species Consortium and the Indiana Coastal CWMA, which is in the 3 counties along the coast in the northwest, coast of Lake Michigan in northwest Indiana. We started out with a full-time coordinator, a list of contacts from an invasive plant workshop that had been held several years prior to my hiring. We had a successful pre-proposal for a Pulling Together Initiative grant, which unfortunately did not pan into a successful proposal, a 10-year long-term work plan, 14 months of funding, and a list of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant deliverables and match, which was very helpful for us. First goal was establishment. So we chose the area that our CWMA would cover, and that includes all 18 counties. Originally, our CWMA was enclosed in the Chicago Wilderness boundaries, but those boundaries actually cut certain counties into portions, and we decided we would cover those entire counties, so we do cover the entire 18 counties. We developed drafted a memorandum of understanding. We met with potential partners and set up government. We focused on organizational development, determined our mission fairly early on, and decided that there were many resources out there, so we could really avoid reinventing the wheel. So I wanted to make it really clear that getting your draft MOU out as soon as possible is really, really important, because you will go through multiple revisions of this with your steering committee before you even get it out to partners. And then once it's out to partners, it may take them several months to a year or more to get it through their internal hierarchy for review. And then they will finally sign it and send it back to you. In some cases, folks who have copies of our MOU have still not signed this document for whatever reason. And this is just how it works for us. And we hope eventually that more people will sign on. Right now we have 49 signatory partners and 4 non-signatory partners. But even if you haven't signed our MOU, that doesn't preclude you from working with us. There are a number of folks that we work with who have not signed on, but they still work quite readily with us, like ComEd or the railroads in this area. So make use of templates available. There are plenty of Memorandum of Understanding templates available online. We have ours posted on our website. And then go forth. meet with potential partners, which really is also very important because meeting people in person puts a face to the name and also establishes a relationship, and listening to those partners will provide you with direction for the projects that you need to work on and will help you to see where the biggest need is in your area. For example, we originally thought that we would need to have a work tool shed where folks could check out or borrow equipment and supplies. We found that really wasn't going to work in our area, and that's perfectly fine. So we have other means of helping people out if they have those sorts of needs. In addition, we're still working on relationships with transportation and utilities folks, and that will continue for quite some time. Setting up government, as I had said earlier, our ad hoc committee, most of our ad hoc committee became our steering committee. We have a 6-member steering committee in addition to a 3-member executive committee. And those folks are voluntary. They serve 2-year terms. They can serve up to 3 consecutive 2-year terms. Determining our mission was also a challenge for us because we were talking about should we deal with all invasive species in our area or just invasive plants. And as you are probably very much aware about the Chicago region, Asian carp is a big issue, so we decided to sidestep that and focus on invasive plants. And there was another question of should we focus on terrestrial or aquatic habitats? Luckily for us, we can focus on both. Right now, we're focusing 50-50. It's based on the grant money we've received. We focus on education and outreach quite heavily. We also are involved in some control work, and we do a lot of early detection and response. So our organizational development, the first year and a half, involved the MOU and getting signatory partners. We have an annual operating plan, which is mostly dictated by the funding we received and some goals for programs that we would like to see continue. We have an annual report that's issued to our partners, is available on our website, and we have an annual meeting to touch base with everyone, as well as to highlight some of the projects that are taking place throughout the region by our partners. We have a website that's up and running. We have a logo. We have continued press releases and PR that's available to increase our presence in the region. And we are really open to opportunity and collaboration. So don't reinvent the wheel. There are plenty of resources out there. As I mentioned earlier, the Memorandum of Understanding is available. Those templates are available through a number of websites, through CWMAs throughout the country. Website design, I actually downloaded templates online and had some help from a designer for that. We use a lot of brochures and materials that have been developed by other organizations, and we just place links on our websites to their websites and pages. And I'm also able to farm out some tasks to partners with expertise, which has been really great. So, for example, we just recently had a banner designed, and I don't have the design capability to do that, but one of our steering committee members works for the Field Museum, and she was able to ask their designer to spend some time designing that for us, which was great. So we just were able to submit the design to the production company and not have to pay for that. Another goal we have, education and outreach. We focus on green industry education and outreach, Clean Boats Crew, which is aquatic invasive species education and outreach, which is heavily influenced by Wisconsin and Michigan's Clean Boats, Clean Waters program. We are participating in as co-PIs of the Illinois Hydrilla Task Force. We do new and common invader trainings, and we are now supporting legislation regarding invasive species. Our green industry and education and outreach is a collaboration with the Midwest Invasive Plant Network, the Chicago Botanic Garden, the Nature Conservancy, Lake County Forest Preserve District, focusing on developing a smartphone application for iPads and iPhones that's now available on the Apple Store, which provides information about landscape alternatives for invasive plants in the Midwest. Also a video, which is focusing on several invasive ornamental species, providing data for visual information about impacts of these species in natural areas. So what this project is basically focusing on is providing outreach to both ends of the green market, so both the consumers and the producers. So the video is intended for the producers because a lot of their responses when we ask about particular species being phased out or being considered for not being on sale anymore, we're often told that, well, I've never seen it be invasive in natural areas. So that video is providing that data for them to see that, yes, it is a problem in these natural areas. The smartphone app is basically intended for consumers. They can take this application with them to the garden center, the nursery, when they're shopping, and they can look up a particular plant by common or scientific name and figure out if that plant is invasive in their region, and if so, this application will provide them with some alternatives. In addition, I do a lot of education and outreach about invasive ornamentals at garden clubs, at garden shows. We were at the Chicago Flower and Garden Show in March, talked with more than 800 people, passed out almost 1,000 of the Bipton landscape alternative brochures. I've done some workshops with Illinois Master Gardeners at their annual conference as well, and this entire project has been funded by the Donnelly Foundation. Okay. Clean Boats Crew, Aquatic Invasive Species, is a collaboration with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. It's funded through Illinois Department of Natural Resources Great Lakes Restoration Funds. We work in multiple counties along Lake Michigan as well as some inland lakes, focusing on providing information to boaters, anglers, recreational water users about aquatic invasive species, how they're spread, and what they can do to prevent transport of these species. So it's been quite successful. This year is our 3rd season, and I'm guessing we'll have, by the end of this season, we'll have talked with more than 5,000 people. New and common invaders training provide identification skills for invasive plants for both natural areas managers, volunteer stewards, even the general public, and also information about how to monitor and report those species. So this is in support of the New Invaders Watch program, which is the early detection rapid response program in our region that was founded in 2003. And this program is funded by Great Lakes Restoration Initiative money and Illinois Wildlife Preservation Fund. And this is just the home page of the New Invaders the New Invaders Watch program website, which provides access to the list of our target species, which are the new up-and-coming invaders in our area, as well as distribution maps for those species. Another thing we're working on in the aquatic realm is the Illinois Hydrilla Task Force, which focuses on a statewide program, but right now it's having a test run in Northeast Illinois. So this program currently involves the creation and distribution of education and outreach materials, which was phase 1 for the early detection portion of it. So we have an ID sheet which has been sent out to volunteer lake monitoring program, river watch, fisheries biologists for DNR, anyone who can take a look out while they're out doing their day-to-day work have received this. So that's more than 350 people have a copy of that ID sheet throughout the state right now. We also have a hydrilla hunt card and a poster that are intended for the general public. So the hunt card is basically small enough to fit in a tackle box or in the glove box of your boat. This is a collaboration involving 16 steering committee members, who are from public, nonprofit, and private sector, and we'll be focusing on the rapid response portion soon. And here I list the website that's now up and running for this particular project, and to the right you'll see the front side of the ID sheet, which we've handed out to volunteers. We also support legislation, which is part of our long-term work plan, and I'm happy to announce that there's been an amendment to the Boat Registration and Safety Act that has been effective since January 1st, which prohibits the transport of aquatic animals and plants on recreational water vehicles, scuba gears, and seaplanes. We're also involved in helping to do the phasing out and state regulation of invasive ornamental plants. NIP is part of the Illinois Invasive Plant Species Council. We are also working with MIPN and the Plant Council to organize an invasive ornamental plant symposium and working group, which will focus on providing both the conservation perspective and a green industry perspective on certain species that may be contentious, and will also include some afternoon sessions involving both conservationists and green industry folk talking about listing species, how to go about regulating them or phasing them out. So we're hoping this will be a very productive meeting and will establish a relationship with green industry that we can continue to work on and work with them on these projects. In addition, NIP is going to be helping out with revisions on the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan. And we're going to be focusing on, again, more on early detection and rapid response, which is part of the New Invaders Watch program, which I mentioned earlier. And we've been training people to become monitors for this program. They receive the training and identification. They also receive a laminated card set with information about these species. They then register to become monitors where they have a user password and ID, and they can go ahead into the system and provide reports on particular populations when they see them. And they're just required to report GPS coordinates, send a photo in. Once those reports are verified, we then send out an alert to folks who signed on to receive alerts. Most of the property owners, the public property owners in this area receive these alerts. And in most cases, control takes place soon after those reports. So here's just illustration of some of the maps that you could see if you were looking to the distribution maps for a particular species in our region. And we are now linked to EDMAP, so our data also contributes to the national database for these particular species. And we're currently updating the status of the populations that have been reported in terms of control. So I know what populations have not been dealt with yet, and that will be placed on a priority list for our strike team, which we're hoping to get up and running next year. We're also involved as part of the Illinois Hydrilla Task Force in the Rapid Response Plan portion of the program. So we're going to be convening a team based on a memorandum of obligation. So folks have to specify in some considerable detail what they are committed to doing as part of the team. We're also increasing capacity to respond to the invasion, because when we've talked to folks who've already dealt with hydrilla in their states, they said one of the biggest obstacles to having control done quickly, which is what the species requires, is they often have to wait to get permission and legal authority to close boat launches or to access property they don't have permission to access. So if we can get that out of the way and have that structure in place before hydrilla arrives in our area, we're in good shape. And financially, we have some funds to purchase herbicide to keep set aside, and it will rotate through. One of our steering committee is a private consulting firm, so they will hold the herbicide and they will use it as it approaches expiration date and replace it. So we have herbicide at hand to take care of this. So this entire project is funded through Great Lakes Restoration Initiative money as well. Coordinating control and management. We often work with diverse partners. One of our largest partners is Illinois Department of Transportation's District 1. They have a vegetation management plan, and they coordinate control efforts with multiple NIP partners, because as everyone knows, if you only handle the invasion on one side of a property line, reinvasion is likely to occur on the other side, from the other side. We also have worked with Union Pacific Railroad, ComEd. I'm really happy that we have Illinois Tollway now on board, who are coordinating control efforts as well, and IDOT Districts 2 and 3 recently signed on. In addition, we have a couple of county DOTs that are working with us, coordinating control efforts, and one county DOT has expressed an interest of creating a county-wide vegetation management plan. We do distribute small grants when we have additional funding available. And in 2011-2012, we distributed about $26,000 to our partners to do invasive plant treatment or research on 731 acres and a multitude of species in different habitats. We hope to have more money to do this soon. Research on invasive plant biology and control is also something that our partners are involved in. We've helped do control research for wild chervil, which is a big problem in Kane County in this area. So we had partners set up experimental design plots to test the effects of different herbicides versus a control. We had blue globe thistle research being conducted by the Morton Arboretum, because we had documented populations of this species throughout the region, and we actually had someone check those historically documented populations, take samples, and grow them in a greenhouse to see how invasive this plant could be. And right now, it doesn't appear to be extremely invasive based on these findings. We also help out researchers throughout this region, providing them with connections for their research projects. Oops. Okay. So focusing on funding, it's in your best interest to get your name out there and provide yourself with a regional or statewide presence, or sometimes at a national level. Be really careful about what you promise for your grants and make sure that you can honor those promises and deliver those grant deliverables. Really important to develop a good reputation with your grantors. Focus on and find your strengths. One of ours happens to be education and outreach. Be open to opportunity, and I know I said that before, but it is very important, particularly when you're working on collaborative projects. Keep track of your successes and accomplishments. Post them, make them available to people, because in this field there are setbacks, and it's nice to have a little bit of positive accomplishments around to see, to remind people of why they're doing what they do. So as far as funding for the organization itself, the ideal would be one large continuous grant to cover salary, benefits, travel, programmatic expenses for a really long time. But the reality is that basically we run on multiple smaller grants pieced together, often on an annual basis. So because federal funding can sometimes be iffy now, we are looking to diversify our funding sources. Right now, we're funded through middle of 2014 through Great Lakes Restoration Initiative from the Forest Service, some funds from Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. I'm still waiting to hear on several other grants that I have in progress. Additional funding sources for us have included the Jimmy F. New Foundation. We've gone to corporate foundations, but we often cannot ask corporations outright for donations because we're not officially a 501c3, because our fiscal agent is Chicago Botanic Garden, and they handle all of our grant money and provide the administration for that, and I am considered an employee of the Chicago Botanic Garden, and they also provide my benefits. But other sources of income for smaller projects include the Jimmy F. New Foundation, which is funding an assistant to help us with the New Invaders Watch Program database update. Whole Foods Dime at a Time program, where they have, for 3 months, they've allowed us to be the recipient of folks' donations of their bag deposits, which has been very nice. We're looking into and sometimes are able to ask for speaker fees for presentations. We'll be considering charging registration for our annual meetings and other events we're hosting. We applied for funding through State Wildlife Preservation Fund, which is funded through income tax. Also have applied for a Toyota Together Green Fellowship, which provides me with the experience of learning how to use social media for our benefit. And we're looking into a state wildlife grant, the competitive version, for helping us have the funds to start a strike team next year. And again, partnership fees may also be an option for your organization, depending upon who you're partnering with and what their abilities are. And I also collaborate, so I may not write the grant, but I can get myself written into some other organization's grant for a portion of money to provide particular services. So that's also a way for us to get some funds to pay my salary and benefits. So in summary, you'll need key partners with a vision, a mission, a work plan, funding, communication, very key, flexibility, persistence, regional presence, which you have to continue to work on, a plan to keep your organization sustainable and stable, as well as a full-time coordinator if possible. And that's all I have, but I'm happy to entertain any questions anyone might have.
Okay, it doesn't look like we've had any questions through the talk today, so what we'll do is just everyone will have your contact information, and I assume it's okay since it's up there. If they have questions, they can email you or give you a call.
That sounds great.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you as well, Phil, for your time and your information today. Great presentations. And also want to thank all the attendees today. We had a nice turnout and hope you got some valuable information. Please keep your eyes open for an email in the near future for the next in this series of webinars. And thanks a lot today, and have a good day, everyone.